I remember the smell of antiseptic, the way the hallway lights flickered like they couldn't decide if they wanted to stay on or give up. I was still in the hospital gown, feet cold against the tile, and in my arms was a boy who wasn't mine. They said I could sit and wait, but I knew nobody was coming back. His name is Liam, 7 years old, quiet, too quiet for a child, like he already knew something most adults still try to deny, that the people who are supposed to love you sometimes just don't. My daughter had walked away that morning, said she needed a minute, that she'd be right back. That was 12 hours ago. She didn't leave a note, not a word, just vanished, like I was supposed to figure it out on my own, like raising her hadn't already taken every last drop of strength I had. Pause. I sat there in that plastic chair until the nurse stopped asking questions. She looked at me like I was the one who did something wrong. But I didn't cry. Not once. I couldn't afford to, because Liam kept looking at me with those big round eyes, scared, holding my hand like I was the only steady thing left in his world. And maybe I was. I wasn't ready to be anybody's mother again. I wasn't even ready to be someone's emergency contact. But somehow I became both. So I stood up, I wrapped that boy in my coat, and I walked out of that hospital. No one stopped me. No one asked where we were going, because the truth is, nobody ever really sees you when you're a black woman past a certain age. You're invisible until you're needed, and disposable once you've served your purpose. But not this time. This time, I was going to make sure someone saw me, and they'd remember what I did when nobody else showed up. The sun was setting when we stepped outside. The sky hung heavy, dull and gray, like it had been threatening to rain all day, but never quite committed. I held Liam's hand as we crossed the lot. He stayed quiet, his eyes scanning every car like he expected her to step out of one. A familiar voice, a wave, something. We walked to the third row from the back. That's where her car should have been. Silver, 4-door, dented on the side from a fender bender she never fixed. It was gone. I stood there a long time, staring at the empty space like it owed me an explanation. Like maybe if I waited long enough, it would make sense. Liam tugged gently on my coat. "Grandma, where's Mommy?" His voice was so soft I almost pretended I didn't hear it, but I did. I looked down at him, searching for words that wouldn't hurt, but the truth always has sharp edges. "She had to leave," I said, "but I'm still here. I've got you now." He didn't ask anything else. Just nodded like a grown man who understood more than he should. I wrapped my coat tighter around him. We didn't speak for a while. Abandonment doesn't feel loud. It's not shouting or slamming doors. It's quiet, cold, like standing in a parking lot with nothing but questions in your arms. I checked my phone, but the screen was black. Dead battery. Even if it worked, I don't know who I would have called. Families scattered. Friends turned into names on Christmas cards years ago. I took a breath. "Let's go home," I said. We walked 3 blocks to the bus stop. The bench was hard and cold. I sat and pulled Liam onto my lap. He leaned into me without saying a word. He was tired. I could feel it in his bones. The bus came. I paid in change, counted out with shaky fingers. The driver didn't ask questions. We sat in the back, and Liam's head found my shoulder before we were even halfway there. I looked out the window. The city kept moving like we didn't exist. People like to say everything happens for a reason, but sometimes people leave simply because they can. And when they do, no one tells you what to do with what they left behind. That night, all I knew was that I had a child in my arms and no plan. But I also knew this. I wasn't going to let him go. The apartment welcomed us with the same familiar silence. But something about it felt different now. Not just quiet, hollow. Like the walls had been holding their breath, waiting to see if we would come back. I closed the door behind us and turned the lock. It clicked too loud. Liam stood near the entrance holding his little backpack in both hands. He didn't ask where to go or what to do. He just looked at me, eyes wide, waiting to be told who he was supposed to be in this new version of his life. "You can put your things down," I said gently. "Come sit." He walked to the couch, carefully, like he was stepping onto sacred ground. I noticed how straight he sat. No slouching, no fidgeting, like he thought being still might make him invisible. I walked into the kitchen. It looked the same as always, chipped tile, a flickering light overhead, the hum of an old fridge that worked hard just to stay alive. I opened the refrigerator. A few leftovers, nothing that could pass for dinner. I boiled water, opened 2 cans of soup, and stirred them slowly on the stove. While the soup simmered, I looked around and saw the details I usually ignored. The stain on the wall near the sink, the loose cabinet handle. The calendar still turned to last month. I brought 2 bowls to the table. Liam climbed onto the chair without a word. He didn't ask for anything different, didn't complain about the food. He just ate, slow and careful, like someone taught him not to waste even a drop. Halfway through his bowl, he looked up. "Do you think Mommy forgot us?" I froze. Not for long, just enough that he noticed. I set my spoon down and met his eyes. "No, baby," I said. "She didn't forget. She made a choice. But that choice doesn't change who we are." He nodded, eyes fixed on the table. I wasn't sure if he understood, but he didn't ask again. After dinner, I pulled the thin mattress from the closet, the one I used when my knees hurt too much for the bed. I laid it beside mine, added 2 folded blankets, and told him it was his space. He didn't argue, just crawled under the covers, curled up like he'd done it 100 times before. I sat on the edge of my bed, brushing crumbs off the blanket, staring out the window. The city lights blinked in the distance, like faraway stars that didn't belong to us. My thoughts drifted to Marissa. I remembered brushing her hair before school, braiding it tight so it wouldn't frizz. I remembered holding her through fevers and tears. I remembered the first time she said, "I hate you," how it landed harder than any slap ever could. And now, here I was, raising the child she left behind. Liam stirred. I turned to check on him, but he was still asleep, just dreaming. I watched him for a while, his chest rising and falling, his tiny fingers clutching the blanket like it was all he had left. I whispered good night to no one in particular, and the walls, as always, had nothing to say. The night settled over the apartment like a heavy blanket. Not comforting, just thick and still. I turned off the lights and lay on the edge of my bed, staring into the darkness, listening to the quiet rhythm of Liam's breathing beside me. He had fallen asleep quickly, without complaint. I wondered if exhaustion had numbed him or if he had already learned that being awake meant thinking, and thinking led to pain. The ceiling fan clicked with every slow rotation, like it was counting the seconds. I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. Every time I blinked, I saw her face, Marissa, staring past me like I was something she couldn't recognize. I thought about the way she left that hospital room, the softness in her voice when she said, "Back in a minute," and the cold finality in the silence that followed. It wasn't just abandonment. It was a decision, a sentence she passed without trial. I got up quietly and walked to the bathroom. I didn't turn the light on. I just stood at the sink, hands braced on the edge, letting the cool porcelain ground me. My reflection in the mirror was a blur in the dim glow of the streetlight through the window. I looked older than I remembered, tired, not just in the skin or the bones, but in the soul. Like something inside me had been carrying weight for too many years, and tonight it finally sagged low enough for me to notice. I splashed water on my face, dried it with a towel that smelled faintly of lavender and old detergent. Then I paused. For a long moment, I thought about praying, about asking God for clarity or strength or even sleep. But the words wouldn't come. It wasn't that I didn't believe. I just didn't know what to ask for anymore. When I walked back into the bedroom, Liam stirred. He blinked, sat up slightly, and looked around like he didn't know where he was. "It's okay, baby," I whispered. "You're safe. Go back to sleep." He laid back down slowly, but his voice stopped me before I turned away. "Are you going to leave me too?" My breath caught. The question wasn't loud, but it landed like thunder. I walked over and knelt beside his mattress. He didn't look at me, just stared at the ceiling, waiting for the answer that would shape the rest of his life. "No," I said. "I won't leave you. I promise." He didn't say anything else, but after a while his breathing softened again, and his small hand reached out, searching. I took it. I stayed there beside him for a long time, holding that hand like it was a lifeline, maybe for him, maybe for me. And in the stillness of that first night, something quiet and invisible passed between us. Not quite trust, not yet love, but something solid enough to build on. I didn't sleep, but I didn't cry either. Because for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly what I had to do. The morning came without warmth. The sky outside was pale and empty, like it hadn't decided what kind of day it wanted to be. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of weak coffee, watching Liam draw quietly on the back of an old envelope with a dull pencil he'd found in a drawer. He hadn't spoken much since waking up, just a few polite words, quiet thank yous, the occasional glance in my direction. I didn't push him. I knew that silence could be a kind of armor. I had worn it myself for years. I stared at the stack of unpaid bills on the counter, unopened envelopes that whispered stress even from across the room. Rent was due in 12 days. The gas company had already sent a second notice. I had $68 in my bank account and 2 more cans of soup in the cabinet. And then came the knock. It was soft, almost uncertain, like someone wasn't sure if they had the right door. I stood slowly, unsure if I should answer. When I opened it, I saw her, Grace, the nurse from the hospital. Mid-50s, tall, with skin the color of rich earth and eyes that carried both strength and weariness. She held a small paper bag and wore that same calm expression she had when she handed me the discharge papers. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she said, "but I couldn't stop thinking about you two." I stepped aside, and she walked in like someone who didn't need permission, only purpose. She placed the bag on the table and started pulling out items: bread, fruit, peanut butter, a carton of eggs. "It's not much," she said, "but I figured it might help." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell her I was fine, that I didn't need charity. But my pride had run out 2 days ago, and Liam was watching. "Thank you," I said softly. She nodded, then looked at Liam. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" He gave her a shy smile, then looked down again. She didn't press. She just sat across from me and folded her hands on the table. "I've worked in that hospital a long time," she said. "Seen a lot of people come and go. But the way your daughter left you, that stayed with me." I looked away, ashamed that someone else had witnessed the moment I still couldn't fully accept. "I'm not judging," she said. "I just want you to know, you're not invisible." Something in my chest tightened, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep my eyes dry. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. She leaned forward. "None of us do, but you showed up for that boy when no one else did. That counts for something." Liam stood and walked over to me, wrapping his arms around my waist. I rested a hand on his back and let my body breathe a little deeper. Grace stood to leave. At the door, she looked back. "If you ever need anything, just call. You don't have to do this alone." Then she was gone. For the first time in days, the apartment didn't feel so cold. The apartment was quiet again. Liam had fallen asleep early, curled on the mattress with a stuffed bear Grace had brought over the day before. I watched him for a long time. trying to memorize the shape of peace on a child's face. But peace didn't visit me that night. My mind wouldn't settle. It kept circling the same question over and over like a bird trapped in a room with no windows. Why? Why did Marissa leave? Why like that? Why me? I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, phone in hand, thumb hovering over her name in my contacts. I hadn't called her since the day she walked away. I hadn't heard a word, not even a message. The last thing she said to me was that she'd be right back, and she never was. But the silence was becoming louder than anything I could bear, so I pressed the button and brought the phone to my ear. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then her voice came through, smooth and cold like a blade. Hello? I froze for a second, then found my voice. It's me. A pause. Then, what do you want? Her tone wasn't surprised, just impatient, like I was someone calling about a late bill or a mistake she didn't have time to fix. You left us, I said, keeping my voice low so I wouldn't wake Liam. You left your son. You left me. I deserve to know why. I don't owe you anything, she snapped. I needed out. I couldn't breathe anymore, Mama. That life, that child, that pressure, you don't know what it felt like. I raised you, I said, alone. I know exactly what it felt like. You chose that life. I didn't, she fired back. And I refused to drown just to keep everyone else afloat. I felt something inside me shift, not break, but rearrange, like a truth I'd been avoiding had finally stepped into the light. You act like he's some burden you never asked for. But that boy loves you, I said. He asks about you every day, and I've been lying to him, telling him you'll call, that you're busy, that you care. I didn't ask you to lie. No, I said, but you gave me nothing else to work with. Another long silence. Then her voice came again, flat and tired. I'm not coming back. And if you're smart, you won't keep dragging this out. Let someone else deal with him. I can't do this, Mama. I won't. Before I could answer, the line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone, the hum of disconnection pressing into my ear. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because there was no grief left for her, only disappointment, only a quiet, hollow kind of rage. I stood, walked to the window and looked out at the street. A few cars passed. A couple argued outside the corner store. Life continued. Behind me, Liam stirred in his sleep. I turned, walked over, and sat beside him on the floor. His little hand reached for mine, even half asleep. He didn't know what happened. He didn't hear the words. But maybe he felt something shift too. I squeezed his hand gently and whispered into the dark, I won't lie to you anymore. And I wouldn't. From this point forward, the truth would have to be enough. The next morning came slowly, like it didn't want to arrive. I moved through the kitchen in silence, pouring cereal into a chipped bowl, adding the last bit of milk. Liam sat at the table in his pajamas, feet swinging above the floor, eyes still puffy from sleep. He ate quietly, pausing every few bites like he was waiting for something. Maybe a voice from the hallway, maybe a phone call that wouldn't come. I didn't tell him about the conversation with Marissa. I wasn't ready. After breakfast, he curled up on the couch with a blanket, flipping through a picture book Grace had dropped off. I cleaned the kitchen slowly, almost deliberately, just to keep my hands busy. But my mind wasn't on the dishes. It was circling the past, like it was something that needed cleaning too. I opened the hallway closet, looking for the space heater. The autumn cold was creeping in fast. As I reached for the back shelf, an old shoebox fell from the top, scattering photos across the floor. I froze. There she was, Marissa at 5, standing in her Easter dress, missing a front tooth but grinning wide. Me behind her, younger, stronger, holding her hand. Another photo. The 3 of us. Me, Marissa, and her father, back before he walked out. before I learned how to live without apologies or help. I gathered the photos into a pile, sat down on the carpet, and let myself remember. I remembered working double shifts, coming home sore and quiet, only to find Marissa waiting up for me with homework in her lap. I remembered burning dinners, scraping pennies, walking her to school in the rain with grocery bags over our heads. I remembered loving her so completely that I forgot to love myself. And maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I gave her too much and demanded too little. Maybe in trying to protect her from the pain I knew too well, I raised someone who didn't know how to carry it. "Who's that?" Liam's voice broke the quiet. He was standing beside me now, holding one of the photos. It was a picture of me and Marissa, sitting on a park bench, her head on my shoulder. "That's your mom," I said, my voice softer than I expected, "when she was about your age." "She looks happy," he said. "She was. Why isn't she happy now?" I looked at him, at his honest little face, full of questions he was still too young to carry. "I don't know," I said. "Sometimes people change. Sometimes they get lost." He sat down beside me, holding the photo like it meant something sacred. "Do you think she'll find her way back?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe it. But I had spent too many years waiting for people to come back. "I don't know," I said. "But even if she doesn't, we'll be okay." He nodded slowly, then leaned his head on my arm, and we sat there on the floor, surrounded by fading memories and the quiet truth that some stories don't get fixed, only carried. The rain started in the late afternoon, slow at first, barely more than a whisper against the windows. But by evening it had turned to thunder. Heavy drops slapped the glass like fists, and the wind howled through the cracks in the old frame. I lit a candle on the table when the power flickered. The kitchen went dim, shadows stretching along the walls like memories trying to take shape. Liam sat close by, his blanket pulled up to his chin. He was trying to be brave, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted every time the thunder cracked. "Storms can't hurt us," I said, setting a second candle by his side. "They're just loud." He nodded but didn't speak. The room smelled of melted wax and rain-soaked wood. I boiled water on the gas stove and poured us both tea, weak and pale, but warm. I sat across from him, hands wrapped around my mug like it could hold me together. I tried not to let my mind wander to what would happen if the storm lasted, if the lights stayed out, if the money ran out, if Marissa came back, or worse, if she didn't. A sharp crash of thunder shook the window, and Liam jumped. He dropped his mug. It didn't shatter, but tea splashed across the table and onto the floor. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, voice tight with fear. "It's all right," I told him. "It was just a little tea." He looked down, ashamed, like small accidents were crimes. I grabbed a towel, knelt, and wiped the floor clean. When I looked up, he was crying. Not loudly, just quiet tears that rolled down without warning. I stood and wrapped my arms around him. He didn't pull away. He leaned in and let himself be held. "Is it okay if I miss her?" he whispered. "Yes," I said. "It's okay." He nodded against my chest. "And if she never comes back?" "Then we keep going," I said. "We love her, we forgive her, and we keep going." The power went out completely just before midnight. The apartment fell into stillness, lit only by flickering candlelight. Liam was asleep by then, curled up on the mattress with the blanket wrapped tight around his small body. I sat by the window, watching the storm drag across the sky, the trees bending under the weight of the wind. I thought about how storms don't ask permission, they just come. And when they pass, they don't apologize for what they leave behind. I rested my head against the wall and closed my eyes. My hands were tired, my bones ached. But somewhere beneath it all, something inside me was holding. Maybe strength wasn't loud. Maybe it didn't roar or shine. Maybe it was something quiet, something steady, like the decision to stay when everyone else left, like the promise I made when no one asked me to. You will never be abandoned again, I whispered into the dark, and I meant it. 3 days after the storm, the sky cleared, but the heaviness lingered. I had begun to fall into a rhythm, not a comfortable one, but something steady. I made lists in my head: when to wash clothes, what to stretch into meals, how to shield Liam from the questions behind his eyes. Grace dropped by every other day, always with something in her bag: pasta, fruit, sometimes just a kind word and a cup of coffee. Harold, the neighbor from 2B, offered to fix the loose stair rail without asking for anything in return. It wasn't much, but it was enough. We were surviving, quietly, carefully, and then she came back. It was early evening when the knock came, not like Grace's soft, careful knock. This was sharp, direct, a sound that said, "I'm not asking to be invited." I opened the door, and there she was. Marissa. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, her eyes hidden behind large sunglasses even though the sun had already gone down. She wore a long coat, expensive, clean. She didn't look tired. She didn't look lost. She looked like someone who had rehearsed this moment and showed up only because she decided it was time. I didn't say anything. "Hi, Mama." Her voice was light, too light. "What do you want?" I asked, my hand still on the door. "I came for him," she said. "I've been thinking, and I want Liam back." Behind me, I heard the soft creak of the floor. I turned slightly and saw Liam peeking around the hallway corner. His face went pale. "Baby," she called out, stepping forward. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home." He didn't move. I stepped between them. "You don't get to walk back in like nothing happened," I said. She scoffed. "He's my son." "No," I said. "He's a child, not a suitcase you pick up when it's convenient." Her voice sharpened. "Don't make this into some drama, Mama. You've had your moment. I'm here now. I've had time to think, and I've decided to take responsibility." "Responsibility isn't something you pick up and put down," I said. "He cried for you every night. He asked questions I couldn't answer. He still listens for your voice in his sleep." She pulled off her sunglasses, eyes flashing. "And what, you think you're his mother now?" I didn't flinch. "I think I'm the one who stayed." Liam stepped out from behind the wall, holding the stuffed bear Grace gave him. He looked from me to her, unsure. She crouched down, suddenly soft. "Baby, it's okay. Mommy's here now." He didn't move. Her voice cracked for the first time. "You don't want to come with me?" He shook his head. Marissa stood, her expression darkening. "This is manipulation. You've turned him against me." "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourself." She looked around the apartment like she was just now seeing it. The smallness, the age, the quiet strength of what we had built without her. "You'll regret this," she said. "I already have," I answered. She hesitated. For a moment it looked like she might say something else, something true. But instead she turned, walked down the hall, and left without another word. I closed the door and locked it. Then I leaned against it, breath shallow, heart pounding, not from fear, but from something else, relief. Behind me, Liam came closer and wrapped his arms around my waist. I held him tightly, my eyes closed. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. She had returned. But this time, we had stayed. The days after her visit passed with a strange kind of calm. Liam didn't ask about her. He didn't even mention her name, but I could feel it, sitting just beneath the surface. Confusion, sadness, questions he was too afraid to say out loud. I didn't push. I just kept moving, kept feeding him, bathing him, walking him to the corner for fresh air. We found a rhythm again. one made of quiet routines and the slow rebuilding of trust. Then one afternoon, she came back. No knock this time, just the sound of her voice through the door. "Open up, Mama." I didn't move. I stood in the center of the room, heart suddenly loud in my chest. Liam looked at me from the couch, a silent question in his eyes. I opened the door. Marissa stepped in like she owned the space. Her heels clicked against the wood floor, her coat still smelling of perfume and money. She didn't look at Liam. She looked only at me. "We're going to have a real conversation now." I crossed my arms. "You're the one who walked away from all of them." She laughed under her breath. "And I'm the one who's trying to come back. That should count for something." "It doesn't count for nearly enough. I'm his mother." "You keep saying that like it's a defense. I carried him. I gave birth to him. And then you handed him to me and disappeared." For the first time, her face cracked. Her jaw tightened. "You think this has been easy for me? You think I don't wake up wondering what the hell I'm doing? Do you wake up in a warm bed, alone, without a child crying in the dark for you?" She looked at me, eyes sharp. "You think you're better than me?" "No," I said quietly. "I think I'm more consistent." She took a breath, stepped closer. Her voice lowered. "I don't want to fight." "Then stop coming here like this is a courtroom. He's not a case. He's a child. One you left. Twice. I was overwhelmed. So was I when you were born. And every day after that. But I stayed." She looked past me to the couch. Liam was sitting up now, holding the bear in his lap, watching her like she was a stranger. "Hi, baby," she said, her voice sweet and wrong. He didn't answer. "Don't be rude," she said, suddenly sharp again. "I'm your mother." I stepped in front of her. "Don't raise your voice in my home." Marissa's face flushed. She looked around the room like she was searching for something to make her right, something to blame. "You turned him against me." "No," I said. "You made choices, and now you're facing the weight of them." Liam stood quietly and walked toward me. He reached for my hand and held it firm and steady. "Please leave," I said. She stared at him, and for a moment, just a second, I saw something real in her face, regret, or maybe just the fear of losing control. "You'll poison him against me." "I won't have to." She backed away. She opened the door, then turned. "I'm not done," she said. "I hope someday you mean that." Then she left. The door closed behind her and the silence returned. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Liam looked up at me. "I didn't want to go with her," he said. "I know," I replied. And this time I didn't have to convince him we were going to be okay. He already believed it. She came back one last time. I knew it before I even opened the door. There was a different energy in the air, the kind that comes before something breaks, not violently, but completely. I opened the door slowly, and there she was again. No sunglasses this time, no coat to hide behind. Just Marissa, standing in the hallway with a look I hadn't seen on her face in years. Not arrogance, not guilt, something closer to desperation. "I need to talk," she said. I stepped aside without a word. She walked in, but this time she didn't own the space. She stood in the middle of the room like she didn't quite know where to put her body. Liam was at the table, coloring. He looked up when he saw her but didn't move. She glanced at him, then looked back at me. "I'm losing everything," she said. "The apartment, the job, the man I left all this for. He's gone. Took my money, my car, everything. I have nothing." I waited. "I thought I could start over. I really did," she continued. "But I've made so many bad decisions, Mama, and now I don't know how to fix them." "You start by showing up when it's hard," I said, "not just when you're desperate." "I know," she said, nodding fast, too fast. "I do. I know I was wrong. But I can be better. I want him back. She looked at Liam again, like he was a piece of herself she finally wanted to claim. I want to be his mother again. I stepped between them, calm, steady, but no longer afraid to say what needed saying. No, I said. Her eyes widened. What do you mean, no? I mean, it's too late. You don't get to walk in and declare yourself ready just because you've lost everything else. He's not a consolation prize. He's not your second chance. I'm his mother. You abandoned him twice. You left him cold, confused, and crying. You made a child carry the weight of your choices. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't know what else to do. You could have called, written, sent a message. You could have tried, but you didn't. You disappeared, and I had to pick up the pieces. I could feel my voice rising, not out of anger, but from years of silence finally catching fire. You think I wanted to do this again? To be raising a child in my 60s? You think I didn't cry at night, wondering if I'd fail him the way I failed you? But I stayed. I stayed when it was lonely, when it was terrifying, when there was no one left to call. I stayed because that boy needed someone to believe in him. Marissa stepped back like the words had slapped her. I didn't mean to hurt him, she whispered, but you did. She looked at Liam again. His small face watched her quietly, but there was no invitation in his eyes. No hope, just caution, distance. He doesn't trust you, I said, because you haven't earned it. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. So that's it? No, that's the truth. What you do with it is up to you. The silence stretched long between us. Then she turned and walked toward the door. Before she left, she paused. Do you hate me? I shook my head. No, but I'm done protecting you from who you've become. She opened the door and stepped into the hallway. I hope one day I'm worth forgiving, she said. I didn't answer. The door closed behind her. Liam came over and stood beside me. He didn't ask what happened. He just took my hand and squeezed it, like he understood more than any child should have to. And for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt free. Weeks passed. The air turned cooler. The leaves outside the apartment browned and dropped one by one, quiet as forgiveness. Life didn't change all at once, but it changed enough. Liam started smiling more, real smiles, not the nervous ones. He began humming when he played with his toys and sleeping through the night without waking up in fear. Sometimes he even asked to help in the kitchen, stirring soup, setting the table, standing on a chair like he belonged there, because he did. Grace still stopped by, bringing small joys with her. A box of crayons, a fresh loaf of bread, a quiet check-in. Harold from 2B fixed the sink leak one Saturday, then stayed for tea and a game of cards he pretended not to lose on purpose. The apartment felt different now. Not bigger, not newer, but warmer. The kind of space where laughter didn't feel out of place. The kind of space that held stories without judgment. And me? I started breathing again. Not the kind of breath that just keeps you alive. The kind that reminds you you're still here, that you made it through. Some nights, when Liam was asleep and the candles were low, I'd sit at the kitchen table and think about all the versions of myself I had carried. The daughter, the mother, the woman who begged for love, the one who stayed silent to keep peace, the one who endured. But I wasn't just her anymore. I was also the woman who said no. The woman who protected a child not because she had to, but because she chose to. The woman who didn't wait to be rescued, who rescued someone else instead. One afternoon, Liam came home from school with a drawing. Just stick figures, wobbly lines, too much color in the sky. But in the center were two people holding hands, one tall, one small. That's you and me, he said proudly. I smiled and pinned it to the wall, next to the calendar and the unpaid electric bill. And somehow, that picture mattered more than everything else combined, because it was proof. Proof that love doesn't always come from blood. Proof that silence can be stronger than shouting. Proof that when people leave you behind, you can still choose to move forward. They thought I was weak, but I learned that survival isn't loud, it's steady, it's quiet, and it holds.